So today let's learn this important rule. This is called castling. This is a special move. So we do castling to protect or safeguard the king. King is the most important piece. If king is checkmated, then the game ends. So to protect the king, this is a special move. And in castling, two pieces are involved. One is obviously king and the other piece is rook. Okay, so castling happens between two pieces, king and the rook. So before we get into castling, let's learn some basic things and then we would get straight into the rules of castling. Okay, so this is the original position for the king. When you arrange the chessboard, you put your king in E1 and you put your rooks here. Same way with the black king will come on E8 and then the black rooks will come here. So this is the original position for these pieces. Now, let's learn what is a jumping square and what is a landing square before we get into the castling. Okay, so king, the immediate square next to the king is a jumping square, and after that would be the landing square. King, the immediate square is jumping square, and after that this one is the landing square. So this is the original position for the king. F1 would be the jumping square and G1 would be the landing square. King, jumping square, landing square. King, jumping square, landing square. Similarly here, king, jumping square, landing square. King, jumping square, landing square. Okay, so this is how it is. King, jumping square, landing square. Okay, so you must be able to identify the jumping squares, which means E1 is the original position of the king and F1 would be the jumping square. If we were doing this side, then D1 would be the jumping square. Okay, if we were doing this side, then F8 would be the jumping square and this would be the jumping square D8. Okay, so generally castling can either happen king side or queen side. Okay, you can either use king and this H1 rook, which is called king side rook because king is placed here. These four columns are king side and king is placed here. Queen will be placed here in the opening before you start a game. Queen will be placed here. So this A, B, C, D would be queen side of the board and E, F, G, H would be the king side of the board. Okay, so if you are doing king side castling, then F1 is the jumping square, G1 is the landing square. Similarly, if you are going to castle this side, F1 would be the D1 would be the jumping square and C1 would be the landing square. Similarly for the black, if black decides to castle king side, then F8 would be the jumping square and G8 is the landing square. If black decides to castle this side, queen side, then D8 is the jumping square and C8 will be the landing square. So I hope now you are clear with what is a jumping square and what is the landing square. This is the sequence: king, jumping square, landing square. 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 Now let's look into castling. Okay, so if I want to castle this side, which is king side, the first thing, the king should not be moved earlier in the game. What if I moved my king to D2 and get it back to E1? Can I castle? No, because in the game, king was already moved. Though it came to the same E1, which is the original square, I cannot castle. The king should not have been moved earlier. If the king moved, then you lost the right to castle. Okay, first step. Then the rook with which you are going to castle. Here, this rook, king side rook, H1 rook. This should not be moved earlier. Okay, so in a move you made a move to h4 and you brought it back in another move to h1. Can I castle king side? No, it is not possible. So the rule says king and the rook with which you are going to castle, they both should not have been moved earlier. Okay, so when your king is under check, you cannot castle. Castling is definitely not a way to escape the check. Okay, so you cannot castle when your king is under check. Now, the third rule would be these squares in between the king and the rook, they must be empty. There should not be any pieces. There should not be any of your pieces. There should not be any of your opponent's pieces. They must be empty. Okay, and then the fourth thing is the jumping square and landing square should not be controlled by the opponent, which means they should not be under attack. Say for example, if I put a bishop here, the bishop is controlling f1, which means bishop is also attacking any piece whichever could be there, whichever white pieces could be there here, right? So the bishop is controlling f1, so now this side castling is not possible. Okay, so if there is no attack on the jumping square and landing square, only then you would be able to castle. So how does castling happen? So first, make sure of all these rules. King didn't move earlier. This is the rook I picked. It did not move earlier in the game. And jumping square and landing square are empty. If it is this side, all the squares must be empty in between the king and the rook. So in between the king and the rook, all the squares are empty. And then especially jumping square and landing square, they are safe. They are not under attack. Now I can castle. I am picking the king. Okay, you should not pick the rook. If you pick the rook first, it would be considered as a rook movement. You cannot castle. Okay, and you cannot use both the hands and pick both the pieces. That is not allowed. Okay, all you have to do is, if you are a right hand player, pick the king right hand and put it in g1, which is the landing square, and then the rook will come forward like this. So this is one move. This is called castling. Okay, now let me show with the rules how to do a queen side castling. So this is the king, this is the jumping square, and this c1 is the landing square. Okay, so pick the king, put it on landing square, take the rook and put it here on d1, the other side. Okay, so this is considered as queen side castling, provided these squares are empty in between, and then there is no attack in the jumping square, no attack in the landing square, and then the rook has not moved earlier in the game, king has not moved earlier in the game. So you can castle queen side this way. Same for the black. So black king, black rook. So I am taking the black king and putting it on the landing square and taking the rook and putting it here. So this is considered as one move, and after this move, our opponent will make some move. Okay, if the black has to castle that side, queen side, then pick the black king. Okay, don't drag it on the jumping square. If the surface of the king touches this square, then you have to move your king one step. It won't be considered as castling. So gently pick the king, put it on c8, then pick the rook and put it here. So this is considered as one move. Okay, so this is how we castle. Okay, let's do some exercises on castling so you would understand much. So here they are asking us to castle, but castling is possible only king side because king has not moved earlier in the game. The rook with which we are going to castle, it has not moved earlier. Now this is the jumping square, this is the landing square. These two squares are empty. So I am picking the king and putting it on the landing square, and then the rook goes there. Since it is computer, rook is automatically going there. But when you are doing it with the real chessboard, you have to pick the king, put it on the landing square, then with the same hand pick the rook and put it before. Okay, so now let's do, can we castle queen side? So they were asking us to castle queen side. Okay, so the king has not moved earlier. The rook with which we are going to castle, this has not moved earlier. Okay, and then this is the jumping square and c1 is the landing square. You have to pick the king and put it on the landing square, and then the rook comes forward. Okay, rook goes the other side. So if it is queen side, the rook goes to d1. Okay, now let's do this. So here is the king, and they were asking us to do king side castling. This is not possible immediately because there is a piece here, there is a knight here. Okay, so the only thing is we have to move the knight. Okay, now black will play something, and after that in a real chess game white will make a move, and after that black will play, right? So now we have emptied the square. There is no attack on f1, which is the jumping square. There is no attack on g1, which is the landing square. Now all I have to do is to pick the king and put it on the landing square, then the rook goes to f1. Okay, so since it's machine, since it's computer, it's faster, but generally we do that. Okay, so now here can you castle? They want you to castle king side. So we have to clear this. So I am putting the rook away. So I have to move the pawn, only then I can move the bishop. Now it is free. Now let me check if I could check. Now is the jumping square safe? Yes, it is safe. There is no attack. Landing square safe? It is safe. I have to just pick it, put it on the landing square and put this here. This one they want you to castle queen side. Okay, so you have to move the piece, move this piece, move this piece away, move this piece. Okay, so now you have made the way. Okay, this is the jumping square, this is the landing square. Put the king on c1 and rook will go to d1. Okay, here castling this side is not possible. Castling on king side is not possible because the rook with which you are going to castle has moved. Okay, if the rook is moved, you cannot castle this side. Now let's try this way. Yes, now it is possible on the queen side. So king side castling is not possible because the rook has moved earlier. Now the queen side is possible because king is still under the original position, and then the rook has not moved. You have to pick the king, put it on c1 and then this. Okay, see now you cannot castle king side because this is the jumping square and this jumping square is under attack. Okay, you cannot castle when the jumping square is under attack. Okay, so you have to block the attack. Now there is no more attack to the jumping square. You can castle. Okay, so now here landing square is under attack. Okay, if the rook is under attack, it's fine, we can still castle. Okay, a jumping square has a piece, so you just simply capture it. Now you can castle. So they want you to castle queen side. So all you have to do is take this piece which was attacking your jumping square and block this attack, and then also block this attack. So now jumping square and landing square are free and they are safe. Okay, and then now you can castle. So this is how we do castling. So we will quickly go through the rules of castling. So when king is under check, you cannot castle. king should not be moved earlier. The rook with which you are going to castle, that should not be moved earlier. Okay, and then jumping square and landing square should not be under attack. So the jumping square and landing square must not be under attack. If the rook is under attack, you can still castle. So follow these rules and do some exercises on castling. So, and mainly the castling is for securing the king and putting the rook into action. Okay, so thank you.